Welcome to another episode of the Straight Up Chicago Investor Podcast. I'm Tom Shawcross, licensed agent with Second City Real Estate. With me, as always, is Mark Ainley, owner and founder of GC Realty. Mark, was that enough energy for you?
Yes. Listeners, I told Tom, I said, you got to come in hard, man. And he got all nervous and you kind of giggled through it. So that's hilarious. That was perfect, man. You came in hard.
My kids are probably like, why is daddy yelling in the next room?
That's awesome, dude. Dude, I just saw on LinkedIn, you closed on a property. You had some, I know you from talking back and forth. You had some zoning issues. How'd you get through all that stuff?
Yeah, so this was actually one I was the agent on. I helped. Shout out to Zach Posey. Bought a wonderful 4-unit over at just awesome building. But always in your attorney review, say this is contingent on having if you think it's a 4-unit, there's being a zoning cert that is 4 units and that it's recent. So what happened was on this one, the seller had an old zoning cert that had 4 units, and then 2 days before close, we get the new zoning cert and it's back to 3. Right. So we had our contingency, so we're protected, because we don't have an updated zoning cert showing 4. They were actually able to go back with that and the water bill. And this is what I haven't seen before. They're actually able to get it changed. I was personally in a situation before where they could not change it. And they said, tough luck. This is what it is. So always a little bit of a crapshoot. You can't just blindly take the old zoning cert. It's kind of Pandora's box over there. And I think everyone I talk to, it's a little bit of a different answer. But with the right ammunition, it took about 2 weeks, but we were able to get it fixed and get this thing closed. So yeah, it's come up a few times. I know, and if you look at the Bigger Pockets threads, we had a thread on this about a year ago. You, me, Bree, and others talking about, hey, I think Henry was on there. This was coming back more and more, not unfavorable to investors.
Yeah, it is a crapshoot, and you hold your breath. Shout out to Lawrence Dunning. He actually helped us recently with a similar zoning issue that we came out favorable as a seller. So it did work for us on that.
Yeah, and the other thing we've worked with on a past deal that was a 3. It was almost the same thing. It was a 3, then it came back as a 2, and then we had that on the back door. We had that plate that had like the apartment number. I posted that in our group before. This is also about a year back. But with that, like we sent that in and they rezoned it to a 3. So there's twice now we've gone to the well and it's actually worked. A few times it hasn't.
Awesome. I actually have another one that's going to go. It's not one I own, but one we manage, not one we rehab, but another developer that I actually have to get involved with a zoning attorney, and it's a nightmare. It says he has to get a zoning attorney, just get out of the violations he has in order to ultimately sell the property. He's got this property for another year and a half easily. So zoning in the city can be tricky and a headache if you're on the wrong side of that negotiation. Yeah.
All right. So what's a housing provider tip of the week here?
All right. So today's episode, we have it's a property management episode, and you hear my smiles, and I do think property management can be sexy, but for all of you though that do not think it is, you have to understand what you're doing. So I just want to, what my housing provider tip today is to talk about A/B class versus CD class, the amount of touches it takes when you're a property manager. I see in the last couple of years, owners that might have started off in the north side, spanning down to the south side or some west side or some C and D, places on the verge type neighborhoods that they were self-managing before on their 2 flat in Logan Square, but now they have their 2 flat in Austin or their 2 flat in South Shore, and they're realizing how much more effort and how much work there is. So you do get your money's worth out of a property manager when it comes to some of these CD class type places for the running and the gunning. But just keep that in mind when you are moving from kind of one class to another, how many more touch points you're going to have with a tenant, a building, maintenance, and so forth, CHA, so forth. So keep that in mind.
Dig it.
All right. Today's guest, like I said, so we got a property management company on here. We're going to dive into some of these C&D class areas. Today's guest, he is co-owner of Chicago Style Management, a property management company started to fill the void of quality property managers willing to manage C&D class properties in Chicago. He's born and raised in the South Side of Chicago, probably a White Sox fan, and Tim has seen both the good and bad of living in underserved areas on the South Side. But he believes the South Side is full of tons of untapped potential for investors and for those looking for a place to call home. His previous careers in construction sales insurance, being a realtor have given him the know-how to be successful in running and growing his property management company on the South Side. So without further ado, I want to introduce Tim Harstead from Chicago Style Property Management. Tim, welcome, man.
Hey, how's it going? I'm going to try to keep up with Tom's energy here for you.
Yeah. No, it's a little stronger, Tim. Come on, a little stronger. Listen, you and me have been networking back and forth, I think, for years now. I was trying to think about today how we even met each other, and I can't even trace it back to a single point. So if you know that, remind me. But I met you when you were working under the Kale umbrella, Kale Realty, and you guys, I think, kind of tell us your adventure out from Kale to what you have now, and kind of the makeup and how you end up at Kale. I'll even take that as well too.
Yeah. So I guess I'll go back one step further than to answer the last question. I got my leasing license. I was at a small company called American Realty. They weren't really able to keep up with what I was trying to do as a broker and selling real estate. So I ended up moving to Cal and like the program as a broker there. And I think as a lot of people in property management that got into it, it wasn't on purpose, but I sold a two flat. So I sold the two flat to a couple from Hawaii. They were actually going to move into one and rent out the other one. Lo and behold, Chicago winters weren't the greatest for someone from Hawaii, and they decided to move back. And they were looking for someone to manage the property. They're still a client today with Chicago Style Management, and that's sort of my leanway into the first thing I managed. Realized that there was a market there and started to build from there. So like a lot of companies, you need your broker's license and need to be part of a brokerage to do management. So started with the owner of Cal, building portfolio in there, which we eventually rolled out into its own company just for better marketing and things like that. So I'm part owner with the owner of Cal, Nick Patterson, as well in Chicago Style Management.
Awesome. DJ Paris, he's also got I'll do a shout out to Keep It Real podcast he has.
Yep.
That I know
podcast.
I want to have DJ Paris on here one day too, to kind of drill down on some of the things he works on his side. So good podcast. If you guys want to check that out, all Chicago specific and more on the realtor side, but good feedback. I know Bruce Schmidt, your managing broker's been on there a few times.
Yep. Except when we have him on, we got to only talk about podcast things. We'll just talk about microphones and editing and just nothing of any value to our listeners.
Yes.
Perfect.
Well, so what made you want to get into the management piece though? I mean, no one, I love the saying, no one ever woke up and said they want to be a property manager. They want to be everything else in life. Why this path? Where's the passion come from? Because I know you have it.
Yeah. No, I think honestly, it's two parts. It's my past. And so previously, like you said in the introduction, before I was a realtor, I did insurance and I did construction. My entire family is blue collar construction. I got everything from bricklayers to plumbers to flooring guys in my family. So I grew up around that world. And then as I became an adult, I grew up in the sales world and in real estate and started seeing the investment potential, but also seeing a lot of really bad management companies, whether it be self-managing and just not being able to keep up with it and realizing it's a second job, or management companies that people hire and that are sort of leaving it in with issues that we have taken over for. So I saw that big gap in the industry, and really just wanting to be able to provide a home that you can be proud of to call a home for residents on the South Side. I wasn't seeing that. Even looking for an apartment for me and my wife, when we were looking around, it was very hard to find a place that you felt comfortable and that was being upkept. So I just saw the gap there that I wanted to help out with.
Where'd you grow up? What neighborhood?
I grew up in West Lawn, so right by Midway.
Gotcha. And we'll break those down a little more here in a little bit.
Good teaser.
Yeah. So the Southwest side, we don't manage there, and I actually send a lot of my referrals to Tim. So I would love to. I'm looking forward to drilling into some of these neighborhoods today. Property management, Southside, you deal with a lot of investors versus, accidental landlords. You have pretty much straight investors for the most part. And of those straight investors, you have a lot of out of state versus local. I know for me over the years, it's been a learning curve of, what out of state investors need to know that we take it for granted. What are some of those things that, in your portfolio of owners that are out of state that now to educate them on the day one when they call versus you knew 3 years ago?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it's expectations. So we have, probably similar to you, we get a lot of California, New York investors, as well as some international investors, that have been priced out of their market, right? A lot of people come, they live in LA, but they don't want to buy rental property there because it's just way too expensive. So I think the biggest gap that I've seen is them looking at properties that are 40,000, 50,000, and their eyes light up, and they think it's going to be turnkey. Unfortunately, even on the south side of Chicago, a $40,000 or $50,000 property is not going to be turnkey. There's going to be work that needs to be done in the property. There's going to be, some rehab value there that has to be done. Even if it's sometimes looks like it's ready on the outside, over the next 2 or 3 years, you're probably bound to have some kind of issue with plumbing or older roofing stock and things like that. So just making sure they really know what they bought has been the biggest effort that I've had to put forward that I didn't realize at first. If I'm working with the investor before they buy, making sure they're getting an inspection, making sure they know the problems beforehand. But if they've already bought the property, just sort of getting them caught up on what needs to be taken care of.
Yeah, weather related. I think a lot of people don't understand the wear and tear that this is anywhere in the city, just call it Chicago market, that these properties take on, that someone from Southern California doesn't understand. They don't understand furnace issues. They don't understand the gutter. Palm tree leaves don't fall in your gutters and back up and flood in your there's a lot of those type of things that we take for granted. It's just kind of normal things that have to be done. And for me, when those things would come up, it's like, yeah, dude, you got to spend a few $100 to do your gutters every year. And they're like, right. I've never cleaned my gutters into my life.
Yep, we just had that conversation. We just did the gutters a couple months ago and had the same conversations. Like, well, was there already a backup? Well, no, we want to prevent that from happening, because if there's water issues going into the brick already, now a $300 annual fee is a couple grand to fix a water damage inside the house. So we want to prevent that for sure. But yeah, getting them to understand sort of the annual maintenance because of the weather.
When you're helping these people on the front end, let's go to the spreadsheet for a second. A lot of times they're thinking like, oh, I should do this for vacancy and this percentage for CapEx and this percentage for maintenance. What are some of those, generalities that do not hold true in these areas that you need to correct your investors on constantly?
Yeah, I definitely think, I guess a couple of things. So, overall big picture, I'm a big fan of using just 50%, maybe even some more if a place needs work, but 50% as sort of what you're going to spend on fixing things and all that, and management costs and all that stuff.
Expense ratios.
Yeah, expense ratios. Thank you.
So just to be clear for our listeners, sorry to cut you off, but that's to be clear, that's without your debt, right? We're just talking about a pure expense. And then do you feel this is true whether it's a single family, an 8-unit, et cetera? Like, is that just kind of your rough back of the napkin number?
I think that's more the rough of the back of the napkin number. I think that when you walk through a property, some are going to be really well done and be a lot less than that. And then others are going to, you're going to buy them at a bigger discount. So they're going to get, have higher expense ratios. So, but a general rule of thumb that I think is if your numbers work at that 50% mark, I think you're good. But the other thing to expect is, the difference between A and B and C and D class. When you have a property in Lincoln Park or, somewhere where rent is $2,000, $3,000, it's a lot more consistent that it gets paid on the first. So just having that, mindset of some of these tenants might take a week to pay or 2 weeks to pay. And there is going to be some times where a tenant might fall behind and you might have to do an eviction every once in a while, and sort of planning for that, having your vacancy rates a little bit lower than, vacancy rates a little bit lower than what you would on the north side, and maybe plan for a month, a year to be vacant on a single family home.
Yeah, I love the ratio part you brought up. I'm big. I always say 55% with the multifamily because, those expense ratios come up a lot more often in the multifamily side of things when there's a pro forma put together by a broker. And they'll tell you right now that they don't put it together based on reality. They put it together based on what they know of the building or be reported by the seller. So as a ability to kind of rule out certain properties that, hey, if it works at 55%, then that at least kind of pushes that to the let's investigate more side of things. And then I think the rent on the south side too. I give a similar message nowadays of like, hey, listen, if you're in the south side and you get all your rent by the day 30, like you're good.
Mhm.
Like, you know, we will pay you as for our management clients, we pay them out at the end of the month. And that's kind of what we try to make sure that we gear everything towards. But I think that's you're winning then if you're getting most of your rent, all your rent by the end of the month.
Yeah, I would agree. And it's a different mindset. You know, we'll have some investors that were investing out of state before or in different areas and have moved to the South Side. And, you know, they'll call you on the 5th and be like, is everything collected? Well, no, Tommy had to go to school, so they had to buy notebooks. And this is just a reality for, you know, some people on the South Side is they're going to look at their funds at the end of the month and go, all right, I got to buy school supplies for my kid or pay rent on the 1st. And they're going to choose to pay rent, you know, a week or two late sometimes. It's just more of a reality there.
And it's not even always due to lack of collection or lack of decision. It might be, you know, if we have a bunch of tenants that get certain monies or subsidies or grants, whatever, every month on the 12th, or we have one person at the 22nd, and then they don't necessarily have banking accounts, so they got to get it cashed and go through, and then they have to go. So it's sometimes just the pay schedules of their income adjust that as well too.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, breaking down kind of what areas are you kind of heavily involved in, and kind of label off some of the neighborhoods that you're focused on.
So we have a lot of stuff in, you know, like the West Lawn area, which is, you know, east of Midway Airport, I guess, going all the way to the lake. So we do a lot in South Shore, Englewood, Chicago Lawn. So we have a lot over there. Bridgeport, we have a decent sized portfolio in. Pilsen, McKinley Park, those areas.
All right, so you're playing a lot of different neighborhoods. Before we break those down, just a more general question. What percentage of your tenants are subsidized versus market rate?
I'd probably say about 20% is going to be subsidized with us.
Okay. And are you seeing, is there a bump in rent compared to what the market rent is there?
No, I mean, so the way CHA works with it, they're going to compare to market rent. They're going to do their own analysis, and it's really random on what they pick as what you're going to get. So if anything, I'd say a lot of the subsidized is going to be lower than what we can get sometimes on market rate. We can advertise something for 1,500. You know, if we have two apartments in the same building, they're both listed for 1,500. We might get a market to take it at 15, and then CHA might come back and say, you know, 1,400 or 1,350 sometimes.
Yeah, that's one big difference from the north side, because the north side, you're in the mobility zone. So that you're in like the bonus round with them. Like if you want to go down that route, you're more than likely going to get the premium. Now you're going to deal with the inspection. You're going to deal with, you know, taking 30 days for it to go through. And then there's other headaches that might wash it out, but just apples to apples on the monthly, like you most likely will end up ahead.
Right. I think the advantage on the south side is just knowing that, you know, barring an inspection issue or something going weird, just knowing that money is going to come in on the first versus, you know, like how we were just talking about sometimes tenants being late. So that's the consistency of the money is really the big draw of having a CHA tenant on the south side.
Got it. And your clients, like, do you have them asking for that just to, you know, in their head, they hear that and they hear guarantee? Like, do you have to coach a little bit there?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have to coach both ways. I think there are sometimes you hear the horror stories of CHA tenants or Section 8 tenants in general, you know, that, you know, I had a horrible experience and, you know, they saw that on the chat board and they'll come to us and, you know, I don't know if I want CHA, and you have to sort of explain to them that you really need to screen those tenants. CHA doesn't screen their tenants before all they do is make sure that the income matches what they need. But they're not screening to know. And, you know, there's great people that are having rough times on Section 8, and there's great people on market rent, you know, and there's bad on both sides as well. So you have to screen and make sure that the people that you're putting in there know how to rent the place, take care of the places that they're at now, and you're going to have a good experience. If you put a wrong tenant in there, whether it's CHA or market, you're going to have a whole different issues coming up in the investment.
Well, just to break that down a little more, like screening wise, a Section 8 tenant, like how, because you can't go, it's tougher to screen some of their income. It's tougher to screen, you know, employment history sometimes if they're not working or they're working inconsistently. Are there any tricks or tips that you do that and you're screening in C and D class areas that might be different that you can share?
Yeah. So, I mean, one, I guess I'll talk first on just CHA specifically. We're still running credit checks, still making sure that, we're not looking for, we know that there's going to be some harder hit credit. And, when you don't have money, you probably don't pay all your bills on time, things like that. But we're really looking for those decisions that they made, when they had to choose between getting a credit card and buying a new purse or paying their electric bill, which one do they do? We want to see those kind of habits be well off and make sure that they're taking care of the property first, taking care of what they need to, and then talking to past landlords. Finding out who their previous landlord is, but also the landlord before that, if you have one, and just making sure that that they can give a good reference that the house was taken care of.
Are you taking chances on people that don't have any, first-time renters or no rental history? Because I know that ends up being a red flag a lot of times when you have a 35-year-old say that I've never rented before, and it's like,
yes. I think you hit the nail on the head, right? If it makes sense, then we'll take the chance. If you're 22 and you just got out of college, or you're 22 and you're living at your mom's house, but you got a real job for the first time, or even 25, 26 in that range, we're probably more likely to take a chance if everything else checks out. If you're 55, but you haven't moved out of your mom's house yet, there's probably some kind of bigger issue going on with you being able to pay your rent. If there's not a reason for that.
Yeah, it's really easy to elude information. A lot of people think because there's no information that there's not a risk there, but I think that's a bigger risk.
Exactly. There's most likely, if you're 55 and you haven't moved out yet, you're probably lying, or there's something else going on that's probably a bigger flag.
Great assumptions. Hey, one more question. I'll go back there on Section 8 versus market. What are you experiencing as far as term of lease? How long? You don't have to give me average dates, but I know for us, we historically have longer term leases, which offset some of that less rent when it comes to Section 8 versus market.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of tenancy, I think Section 8 is definitely more stable. I would probably say, just because of, you got to remember, even from the tenant side, it's a hassle for them to move, for them to get their moving papers. So they really need to want to move or have a reason that they want to move. So I think, market tenants are probably an average of 2 or 3 years with us, but we see CHA tenants that have been in place for 5-10 years easily.
Yep. One more question here, just for our listeners. Talk to us about wanting to get that rent increase. When do you go request it to CHA? If someone's never gone through that process, just give the quick 101. Yeah.
So the big thing for us in our experience, even though they say there's no correlation, I'm not 100% sure on that. So we stick to, CHA is going to do an annual inspection. And what we don't want to do is trigger that. So what we have seen is sometimes when the lease is up and you ask for that request, it's going to trigger that inspection sooner. So we don't want to do that. But what basically our strategy is, as soon as we pass the annual inspection, we ask for a rent increase. You're going to go always shoot high, because they're never going to give you more than you ask for, but they'll certainly tell you less. So we'll throw a number that's sort of an exaggerated of what we want, and ask for that rent increase, and then wait for them to come back with the counter offer. Just like any good negotiation, you don't want to give them your final number, because it's going to come in lower when they come back. So you want to throw a little bit higher number and let them come down.
If anyone out there can ever break that down for us, because for me, I feel like you give them comps on the MLS. They say we only look at comps on Go Section 8. When you give them comps on Go Section 8, they try to tell you it's based on the tenant's income. When you say, hey, the tenant's working more, they say that, like, I feel like it's such a route.
So it's, I can give it to you if you want.
Yeah.
It's the lower of 3 parts. All right. So you have your advertised rent. They're never going to give you more than what you asked for. Then they're going to go on to gosection8.com, which I think changed its name now. I can't think what the new name is. But they're going to go on there. And here's the kicker on that, though. They look at 3 randomized. They'll put a half-mile marker, and most realtors will look at all of them and try to average it out. They randomly draw 3 or 4 apartments from there, from what I've been told, and that's what they use. So it's not, even if you submit things from Go Section 8 or submit things into Go Section 8, it's not necessarily always going to be used. So they're going to look at that number of what is the market rent. And then they're going to look at, they have a calculation on what the home can afford. So it's the lower of those 3.
So you're saying that they're just basically taking that. So if you have an improved unit and you or an updated unit, but the comps on Go Section 8 might just be average or they haven't been updated in years, you're kind of getting jammed for that. Is that kind of what you just said?
A lot. So they'll make adjustments just like an appraiser, right? They'll take a look but the issue is they're not looking at all the comps. They're only looking at 3 randomized comps. So if the bigger issue is if you get unlucky and they pull some comps that a landlord's under marketing or underpricing, they'll adjust and say, okay, your kitchen's newer, so we're going to add some money, but they're not going to look at, the house next door that just rented for $1,600 when they randomly pulled a house that rented for $14. So they'll make some adjustments, but they're not necessarily using all the comps available.
Gotcha. All right. That's huge. We're going to make that separate video for the website.
Yeah. And the other thing real quick that I just thought of on that as well is going to be the bedroom voucher. So if you get a 2-bedroom, how many bedroom voucher they have has a cap of how much it can go for. And that cap moves depending on the area, like Tom was saying with the zones up north and things like that. But if you have a 2-bedroom voucher, apply for a 3-bedroom house, you may be able to get more money if you find a tenant with a 3-bedroom voucher.
Gotcha. Okay. Awesome. So, looking at your area, I really want to focus on that southwest side there, kind of starting from kind of West Lawn and going east. So you have West Lawn that really borders at Cicero and butts up to the airport there. Like, talk to me about West Lawn and what it's done over the years, and I was kind of give some insight on there. Talk to me as if I was an investor and I asked you, should I invest in West Lawn or what should I know about it?
Yeah, I mean it's so that's actually where I grew up. So, it's safe, it's stable. There hasn't been a lot of improvements there, or a lot of Pasture, which is the grammar school there. They had a lot of upgrades 10 years ago, new buildings and things like that, but there hasn't been much since then. But at the same time, part of that is because it's all residential, right? So it's probably 80% houses, which is a good sign. If you are an investor, like the more houses on a block compared to apartments, I always look at it as a good block to invest on. And so, but it really has been stable. As you start to go further east into, Chicago Lawn and things like that, that's where you're starting to see a lot of increases where, like 10 years ago or 5 years ago, rent was probably $500 or $600, and it's closer to 11 or 12 now in these apartments.
So if Chicago Lawn, though, just so for listeners, that's a larger one of the neighborhoods of 77 that encompasses Marquette Park, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So it's one of those things, and it's always confusing because it's like I'm trying to think of, it's like a Logan Square neighborhood where like part of Bucktown's in the original Logan Square, but so there is, I would consider, when you say Chicago Lawn, a lot of times I consider in between that 47th and 63rd as the Chicago Lawn's the 77, but there's different names inside the neighborhoods. So, if you're saying you're moving to Chicago Lawn, you're probably in between that 63rd and 47th Street, in between Pulaski and Western. And then Marquette Park is going to be that 63rd to 67 or 63rd to 75th ish in that same area. That's Marquette Park.
Yeah, it's funny because you got Logan Square, you got Palmer Square, you got all that different stuff that way. Talk to me about the housing stock in Chicago Lawn there, or Marquette Park, or wherever.
Yeah, so it's been a lot of you do have a lot of older housing, so that's one thing to be careful with over there, is just making sure that you're getting inspections done and everything like that. But I've always looked at it on an investor standpoint as Starbucks is one of your leading. If they're going in places, they've done a lot more research than we can, and they have a lot bigger team. So that they've built recently Starbucks on 63rd and Kedzie, and a couple other areas, one on Pulaski over there. So there's some things being built, gyms and stores that are in that area that were not accessible before. So we're really starting to see a lot more industry there that's driving people to want to live there and actually not have to, drive 30 minutes to go get food. So we've been seeing an increase the last 5 years of people wanting to live there.
So West Lawn versus like Chicago Lawn, though, like what's like, and I know these aren't exact, but percentage, like percentage of like renters versus owners? I think that makes a big deal in a neighborhood.
Yeah. So like I said, I think West Lawn is probably closer to 80-20 on the owner side. Again, you're going to have, as you get closer to the actual airport, you're going to have some more, pilots and things like that are owning there, and less renters. And then once you sort of, Pulaski is really that big divide, even though it doesn't technically divide West Lawn from Chicago Lawn, but it really divides the neighborhood feel. You're going to start to see probably closer to 50-50 once you get past Pulaski.
And then just to be clear, as we're going east here, are you seeing rents drop a little compared to where they'd be closer to the airport?
Yeah. So you'll see. Yeah. So you see them drop. Oddly enough, though, and I don't really know the explanation of this. After you get past Chicago Lawn, they'll start to raise a little bit more. So when you're into West Englewood, you'll actually see some higher rent prices there.
Okay. And do you feel that's just the speculation on the comeback over there, or it's kind of
Proximity?
Yeah. Yeah, you're getting closer to downtown. That's kind of a weird,
honestly, I think it's more of landlords baking in tenants not paying. I think it's just there's a higher charge because a lot of times in some of these neighborhoods you're renting and you're expecting 8 months out of the 12 to get paid. And I've talked to some landlords that have bought over there, and that's sort of their philosophy. So they bake some of that price in on the rental side there.
It's a big contingency.
Yeah. Yeah.
As you start to have clients, and let's say, they start over in West Lawn, they say, hey, I just saw what I can buy in West Englewood at a lower price per door. Mm-hmm. What's your messaging to them? What are some of the either gotchas or okay, you can, but here's what you need to be aware of? Yeah.
So I think it's all a matter of investment style, right? There's, if you go to a casino, there's certain games that you're going to win $1, but you're going to win 75% of the time. And then it's probably not true in a casino, so it's probably bad, but for my point, you're going to win like 75% of the time. You're only going to win $1. But there's other areas where you'll probably win 50% of the time only, or 40%. But when you win, you're going to win 20, 30, $40 or $1,000, and that's really how I look at a lot of this is when you're investing more in lower C class or D class, you're really trying to get a bigger payout. But you could strike out and not get paid for a couple months or have to go through an eviction process. Whereas when you're in the C's or B or A class, even, you're not going to make as much. But it's going to be a lot more consistent.
For your portfolio that you manage between, just say West Lawn, Chicago Lawn, West Englewood, like what is, maybe break down the desirability for leasing or how fast things are getting rented. And then also kind of, I'd be curious on the subsidy mix you have in those three neighborhoods as well too.
Yeah. So, I would probably say that, in West Lawn is the fastest to, you put it up, and just because there isn't as many apartments and it is a little bit more of an affluent area on that side of Pulaski, it gets rented out a little bit quicker. On the Englewood and Chicago Lawn side, they're probably about, probably average, 30 days from if they're ready to go, 30 days to get them rented out. In terms of subsidy, you see a lot more in Englewood than you do in both of those. We'll probably have, out of our portfolio in Englewood, probably 50% is CHA, whereas in West Lawn, it's zero. So, that's just what we're seeing.
So even breaking down West Lawn, what I heard you say is if you're it kind of spans Pulaski, but if you're west of Pulaski, that's even better. So the further west Correct. You are, the better.
Yeah, Pulaski's like, we create these 77 neighborhoods with a magic marker, but there's always a little bit different of an actual street that splits what you see, and Pulaski's the big street that splits it up, I think.
So talk to me about that from the south. Like when you are going south of like Chicago Lawn or West Lawn, you're getting right into Evergreen Park, Beverly, Burbank. Those are pretty borders. Is it similar that way? Like if you're going to be investing in Chicago Lawn or Marquette Park, you want to be kind of south there? Is it accurate?
Not so it's split, right? On West Lawn, yes, the further south you get, the better. Chicago Lawn is going to be the opposite. So you want to get, if the closer you are to 47th, you're really going to get better, more value there. Whereas in West Lawn, 63rd, 65th, 75th, you're seeing more value on that side. So, unfortunately, this is the hardest part about Chicago in general, especially the Southside, is, a 2-block difference can be the difference of, having a block that has a bunch of gangs and drug deals on it versus having a block with like no violence, no crime or anything. It's a really weird world.
Investing in a place like West Englewood or Englewood, what's the secret to success there? Like, what do you, if I'm looking at an investor, what do I need to do to really actually be profitable?
Yeah. So 2 things, I'll say. One is patience. So if you're taking the wrong tenants in, you're going to have a hard time. So a lot of landlords that come to us that have, been self-managing for 5 years and said that it's not working. The biggest issue is they're jumping on that first person that applies and they're taking them, and they're not making sure that they're the right tenant. There are a lot of great tenants in that area, but there's also some people that are going to try to give you fake pay stubs and things like that. So really weeding that out, because once you get the right tenant in there, I mean, they're going to live there. Their family's going to be across the street, and they're going to stay there for a really long time, pay rent, and be good to the home. So that's the first part, is just patience. And then the other part is just treating the building like you would if it was on the north side. So I sometimes will see people that will come in and they want to do everything as cheap as possible in the building because it's, lower rents than what you get on the north side. But really that will add up, because you make a fix that you have to fix again in 6 months. And now it's double that price, which is, 1.5 times what it just costs to do it the right way.
Yeah, especially with leaks.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly.
Well, what's the actual housing inventory over there? Right? Like, are we starting to get into graystones when we're getting into West Englewood? Like, what's just the makeup of the actual architecture?
Yeah, a lot of it's
brick frame, etc.
The biggest thing is going to be the bungalow, the historic bungalow, and a lot of them have been turned into 2-flats. In the 50s and 60s. So that bungalow, the brick bungalow, orange bricks, and you'll see like the balconies. But it's amazing how many buildings I can walk into with a client for the first time and know exactly where everything is, because the layouts in a lot of these neighborhoods are exactly the same. So you sort of walk in and it looks familiar.
Man, on a side note, I don't know if you've ever driven down there, Tom, but when you're or I know you have, Tim, but on the east side over there by like the high school and like Yale, Harvard, like some of those houses are some of the most like the nicest houses in all of Chicago. Like, because
Absolutely.
Englewood used to be if you read the White Devil in the White City, like Englewood was a fluent suburb early on, and that's when all that housing stock was built. So Englewood's got some very amazing history. Yeah,
and I mean, I think Miss O'Leary's mansion just sold or still on the market on Garfield over there. That's a huge mansion.
Yep.
I've met clients before that were investing, and they gave me their address, come meet them, and I pulled up and I'm just like, where did I go? Because you're 2 blocks away. You got houses that look like they were burnt down and no one touched them, and then all of a sudden you turn on this block and it's all 5-bedroom, huge houses with yards and just built magnificently. These were millionaire. They weren't millionaires back then, but whatever the millionaire was in the 1920s where they were living.
10,000 heirs.
10,000 heirs. Yeah, there you go.
So we got to wrap here soon, but just, when you're just north of these neighborhoods, Gage Park, West Elsdon, like I know we have managed stuff in Gage Park. We manage stuff over in West Elsdon. It's a lot of single family homes. Like, what's your opinion on those areas, and as far as a landlord's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Again, West Elsdon is going to be a little bit of a drop down from the West Lawn area. And then I would say Gage Park is going to be a little bit of a step up from the Marquette Park area. So that's sort of a circle there. If West Lawn is the closest to an A, Edelson's going to be, if we readjust the letters, out of those 4, West Lawn's the A, Edelson's the B, Gage Park C, and then Marquette Park, would be the D out of those 4.
Over the last, you grew up there, so you have that perspective. But in your professional career, like what areas, what parts of these neighborhoods have you seen change the most as far as for the good?
Yeah, Marquette. Marquette Park has probably been the most, especially around the Kedzie, around Kedzie and 63rd. That whole area has just been built up a lot in the last 5 years. So definitely from a trying to predict the future thing, that's where I would, see the most growth in the next 5 years in rent prices and values of the homes.
What do you shoot at the 9-hole over there?
They found I haven't shot there, but they have found the alligator there. So we got this summer that Marquette Park has the alligator instead of Humble.
Nice.
It's awesome. How has the the airport from Midway, from what it was 20 years ago, it's amazing, like what they've done to that place and what they've done at such small real estate. That's the other part that amazes me too, like how it's so like compact. Like I think it's so crazy. There's people live like literally 100 feet from the runway.
Yeah.
How does that impact these neighborhoods, and how has that changed over the years? Is it just from a jobs perspective, or is there anything good about it?
I think the direct, like if you cut out like the 2 or 3 blocks around it, right? No matter what direction you go to, you see a lot of houses bought by pilots, stewardess, things like that, where they're just really trying to go to work within, be able to walk to work type thing. Beyond that, I don't think I've really seen too much of an impact on there from it. I think there's been more of an impact from the factories and things like that being built around on 47th and 75th and all that stuff we've been seeing, Nabisco and things like that job wise.
You've been down here for many years now. I talked to you on the side, and you have plans to grow your business. Like, where are you planning on taking your property management business for investment? You invest down there as well too. Like, where are you planning on going here in the next 5-10 years in these neighborhoods?
Yeah, I think a lot of it. Again, I think Marquette Park is going to be a big part of the growth there. Gage Park, as it starts to get a little bit, the rent goes up a little bit more. Are probably 2 areas that I've been targeting a lot, looking at things there. And then again, I think just, going a little bit further south from there, even you're going to get some of the more single family homes versus apartments. Once you get past like 75th and things like that going south, you don't see as many apartments towards, the Pulaski area, but you see a lot of single family homes. So I think that's probably the next venture. It's really hard to find a house to rent over there. If you're going to rent, you're going to rent a small 1-bedroom. And I think lifestyles are changing to where people don't want to always buy a house. They don't want to take care of it. So I think single family homes in those areas are going to be a good investment.
Cool. That sounds like job security for the property manager.
Yeah.
One piggyback question before we wrap. So Tim, I know buying a Southside bungalow and getting long-term financing from an investor standpoint is pretty difficult. Right? In general, buying a single family home, it's just, if you're not doing Fannie Freddie, and then when you go commercial, they can decide, no, this is not in our portfolio, right? Like, we don't want to play in this area. They can legally do that when they're a commercial lender. So do you either have direct lender referral or advice for someone looking to build a portfolio this way? Because when I was down there, this was one of the toughest things I ran into, was consistently finding financing that wouldn't just crap out on me the next time around.
Yeah. Unfortunately, no. It's every deal is going to be different, and there's going to be there's solutions, right? But every deal is going to be a little bit different. Like you said, commercial gets the legally red line, which
it's crazy.
It is what it is. But
and they just blatantly tell you too. It's unbelievable.
But I think they want homeowners to look to be one way, and they make sure that the redlining is a thing. But then commercial loans just sort of whatever. But I think one of the nice things, well, not nice, but I guess depending on how you take this, but I think owner financing and getting creative is definitely a possibility down here, because you see a lot of older people that are moving either to the suburbs or moving out of the area, but they just can't get what they want for the home. So I think that's going to be one of the big ways. And then just sort of make a lot of phone calls. You're going to find some bank that will take it. And it might not, you might have one that takes 2, and then you have to call another bank for the third one. It's just a different bank that will accept it.
Yep. Cool. Good advice. Mark, anything else?
That's it.
Wrap it.
Let's wrap it. I've said this before, but we need the music that comes between the ending of that and the wrap. So I'm going to work on that. All right. Awesome. Great show so far, Tim. So here we go. as a property manager, what's your competitive advantage in these seeing D-class neighborhoods?
I think just understanding both the investment side of it and the side of being a tenant in those neighborhoods and what their struggles are, and just being a people person, I guess, is the biggest one. Being able to look at the numbers and the people. R&R,
rapport and relationships. I love it.
Mm-hmm. There you go. What is one piece of advice you would tell someone that has yet to buy their first property here in Chicago?
Just do it. I think the first one you buy is the hardest, and all of a sudden you're going to come to us and have 10. But it's never as hard as the first one, and you're probably going to make mistakes. So don't try to solve them all before you buy it.
What do you do for fun?
I'm a big sports guy, so White Sox and Bears, watch games, and go to them when I can.
Nice. I was right on the White Sox.
It wasn't that hard of a guess.
What's a good book, podcast, or self-development activity that you'd recommend to our listeners?
That's a good question. I think the Never Split the Difference is a good one in terms of negotiation and just being able to get through. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll link that in the show. I don't know if we've talked about that one. That's a great one.
We haven't talked about that one, but I reached out to his publicist to see if we get him on the podcast.
We're moving up in the world.
He was on PMLX last year. He was.
That's what
he's great.
I asked Andrew Smallwood if he could make a connection. And he gave me his publicist, and the publicist they wanted a check. I said, well, you can come on here to promote a book or whatever. So, that's great. He'd be awesome to have on here. He'd be awesome to just hang out with. All right, cool. Besides yourself, name one person in your local network that you'd highly recommend to other investors as a quality resource.
I think RJ from EJC Construction is, I bounce a lot of ideas off him as well. So good, always good to have good contractors in your portfolio when you're buying something to know what's going to cost to fix it and things like that.
Yeah, and we just had him on episode 146, I believe 146.
Nice.
So do a quick look up there. So, Tim, thank you so much. You provide a ton of value to our listeners. How can they learn more about you? Is there any way they can provide value to you?
Yeah, definitely check us out, chicagostylemanagement.com. My email, if you guys have any questions for us, is tim@chicagostylemanagement.com. And just keep, any questions you have on the Southside, let us know. And that's, I think mutually answering your questions helps us solve other problems. So.
All right, Mark, let's see if you can get this one. Who are we playing for?
We're Megan G is the person that
people give your full names. Come on.
I know. I'm only working with what I got. So Megan G, she bought a Straight Up Chicago Investor t-shirt. So thank you, Megan.
All right. So this actor and comedian, born in 1965, was raised in the Marquette Park area to an Irish father and Lithuanian mother. Coincidentally, was nominated for his performance in Chicago in 2002. But you probably know him better from his role in Talladega Nights and Step Brothers. Name that Chicagoan.
Dude, Will Ferrell's not from Chicago.
No. So who's the other brother?
What's his name? I don't know his name. I know who you're talking about.
Tim, can you help us out here?
It's something Riley. CJ Riley. What I can't think of his first name.
Enough. John C. Riley, brother Ice grad.
Oh man, that's awesome. I never knew his name, but I love him. My kids literally I'm like, we gotta make some room here. We need room for activities from Step Brothers where they want to make the bunk beds.
Did we just become best friends?
Oh, that's awesome. Megan G, I am sorry. I failed that one. I think we'll get Renovo to still send you something out here. So thank you for buying something and thank you for playing. All right. Awesome episode. So Tim, it's something we're going to start here on this episode. This was an idea of Javier. What I need you to do the next week is to find us someone else that'd be a good guest that you think for the podcast. So help us find that out. Tom, great show as always. Tim, thank you for coming on. Love networking with you outside of this podcast. Listeners, if you have anybody that you think would be a good podcast guest, or if you have a topic that you want to find a great guest for, let us know. Straight Up Chicago Investor at gmail.com, or you could go online to the Ask Tom and Mark, where we also get some ideas for shows where people ask questions on there as well too. So Tim, thank you. Tom, thank you. Tim, I will hold you to that. I need a guest soon.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks for having me.
DJ.
Thanks all.